everyone. Welcome to CBR Saga, CBR's one and only podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Asgard University. You see, Asgard University isn't a place, it's a people. So that's why they offer affordable online education for the Asgardian on the go. Sign up now for a special discount on language classes that include both Norwegian and Groot. Anyways, enough with corporate sponsorship. Let's get into our episode. We're bringing you another exciting debate that pits some of the best Avengers against the heroes from the smash hit Invincible. In today's matchup, we're bringing you a battle of titans with Invincible versus Thor. Then we're getting a little power heavy with Scarlet Witch versus Adam Eve. And then we'll wrap it up with the battle of tech geniuses Iron Man versus Robot. It's going to be a great episode. I'm joined by my co-host Nick. Nick, how you doing today?
Doing very well, Jacoby. Thank you for having me on such a fine day.
Of course. So we already know and love the Avengers for obvious reasons. I mean, they're everywhere in our lives. But Invincible is like the new kid on the block when it comes to superhero content. I mean, even though the comic, I think, has been around for quite a while, the show has really taken off in popularity. I mean, like, what do you think makes these characters so appealing overall?
I think it's sort of a combination of things. So the Invincible comics are really interesting in that they borrow a lot from other comics. Like once DC and Marvel sort of came around, it's hard to do something way different. Some comics have achieved that, but I think what Invincible does is uses that sort of trope and flips it on its head a little bit. So you have like heroes. Invincible is clearly like a combination of like a Spider-Man character with like the powers of Superman kind of thing.
With the name of Dick Grayson.
Yes, it's a bit on the nose sometimes, but the coolest part about Invincible is the characters are never like 100% what they seem. Like often heroes become villains, often the line is towed. If you look at just the first season, like everyone thought Omni-Man was the Superman of this universe, and that turned out to not be the case. So that's what I like most about the Invincible comics.
So they definitely got a lot of depth to them, but let's see if that depth will actually help them in a fight against Earth's mightiest heroes. So you think overall Invincible fighters will win against the Avengers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're more indestructible. They're more invincible, if you will.
Ah, I see what you did there. All right, so that kind of leads us into our first big matchup. We're pitting Invincible against Thor himself. This is two big-wig, strong people going at it. So why do you think Invincible would win this?
I think Invincible wins this. One, for sheer willpower. Invincible doesn't like to give up. Thor, we've seen, likes to give up for 5 years at a time. But Invincible is able to take a harder hit. He's basically the Rocky fighting Apollo in this situation. He's got a hard head, he can take a punch, and he'll outlast the fight. And I think over pound for pound, I think Invincible, being of Viltrumite background, is stronger and more durable than Thor.
See, I kind of view that a little bit differently because I think Invincible is the perfect example of a technically correct but flawed name. I mean, because yes, Mark Grayson cannot die, and he's proven to be an insanely strong hero. But you know what he is almost above all else? He's a punching bag. I mean, like, when up against low-level villains, yeah, he can't be touched. But when he's up against, like, actual threats like Battle Beast or, like, Omni-Man, then he gets, like, the snot beat out of him. I mean, that's what's going to happen when he goes up against Thor Odinson, the God of Thunder. He's going to put up a good fight, but he's just going to get pummeled and crushed into a bloody pulp like he usually is against stronger opponents.
And that's fine. He can take that because he's invincible. The problem is the villains you named, like Omni-Man and Battle Beast, those two would decimate Thor. Like, Thor wouldn't even stand a chance because we've seen Thor fight villains of a higher level. He has no chance against Hela. When he fights Thanos the first time, Thanos is able to take a blow to the chest just like Invincible does all the time and still win. So I think Invincible has this sort of background of being punched and being beaten to a bloody pulp, as you say, to where he's kind of used to it and he's able to bounce back from it further now. I think Thor, who hasn't seen a lot of loss outside of like Hela and stuff like that, he doesn't get beaten up very easily. When Invincible's punches are able to actually hurt the God of Thunder, because they will, because Viltrumites are that strong, Thor will be taken aback and Thor won't know what to do.
Look, if you're arguing against like early MCU Thor, then maybe I'd give that to you. But this, you're saying that Thor loses a lot, but all of his losses that he's kind of experienced throughout his life has only made him that much stronger. I mean, yes, he's gone up against Thanos and lost the first time, but what did he do? He learned and he adapted to that situation by next time going straight for the head. He was able to dig in deep and tap into a new power after facing Hela the second time. Thor has learned so much through the MCU, and the Thor that we get now is OP Thor. He is he is God Thor. There is nothing that Invincible can do that's going to rattle him, that's going to shake him, that's going to get into his head. This is Thor operating at peak level power. This is the Thor that could restart a dying star with his bare hands. I mean, I like to see Battle Beast do that. He can't. So you're saying that even Thor would lose against Battle Beast and Omni-Man? That's not true. He would crush those guys, and he would crush Invincible because Invincible is just starting out. Look at everything that Thor has has gone through. He's 1,500 years old. Mark Grayson is 18 years old. He's still going through basically close to puberty at this point, still trying to figure out his powers. He's still reeling from the loss of his dad's betrayal. Thor is going to win this because he has experience and the power.
Experience and power is great. Invincible has that later on down the line, but if we're talking Invincible in the show, Invincible's learned much harder lessons than Thor, because even when he starts getting his powers, his dad punches him just to show him what it's going to feel like when he gets punched. The big difference here is Invincible takes defeat much better than Thor. So I think in a fight, when Thor lands a blow, Invincible's going to be able to take it and counter better than Thor will be able to take it. When Thor gets hurt, Thor gets knocked down. Thor is easily taken out by Valkyrie just with a little shocky thing on his neck. I don't think it's that difficult to beat Thor, and I think Thor is so cocky, even in these later years in the MCU, even after he's experienced all this stuff. I still think he's cocky Thor when we see him on the Guardian ship and things like that, joking about being the captain. He's learned some lessons, but he's still a guy who thinks very much of himself, and I think Invincible, being the humble kid that he is going to be able to take advantage of that.
We're talking about Scarlet Witch versus Adam Eve, and I'm excited for this one, and I'm gonna kick this one off. So I think Scarlet Witch has evolved to become the most powerful magic user in the MCU. Before, she was just this weird girl, but if we take Scarlet Witch right now, who's using things like the Darkhold to increase her powers and has learned to access them better than before, then I just think there's no way to beat her, because I think what this comes down to is basically a reality manipulator versus a matter manipulator. And in this case, my money's on the reality manipulator.
So, I agree Scarlet Witch has come a long way. However, she is still, again, she's very in her own head. She still has a lot to learn. Yes, she's studying the Darkhold. She's getting better at magic. But we've seen in shows like WandaVision and movies like Age of Ultron, like Captain America Civil War, that she doesn't have full control of her powers yet. So in a firefight, she could struggle. Adam Eve is incredible, and she has one clear advantage over Scarlet Witch. She can't die. Her powers of matter manipulation literally kick in the comics when she dies several times and literally bring her back to life. So like Invincible, and honestly like most of the characters in the Invincible comics, she can take a beating and still overcome and come back from it. She has mastered her powers much earlier than Scarlet Witch did, so she's had a mastery of them a lot longer. And matter manipulation might not sound as good as reality manipulation, but in essence, it's the same thing. What is reality if not changing the table into a sword and then stabbing Scarlet Witch?
Look, I think Adam Eve is basically a glorified children's birthday party magician compared to Scarlet Witch. Yes, Adam Eve can make things and use them, but that's like her base level. Scarlet Witch can not only make things as well, but also fundamentally alter the universe through magic. Adam Eve is stopped by that pesky thing, I think, called science when it comes to her powers, and Scarlet Witch doesn't have those types of limitations. And you say it's like, oh, she can't die. Adam Eve can't die. Scarlet Witch has proven time and time again that she can beat enemies without killing them. She cursed Agatha Harkness to a horrible destiny, a horrible fate of just being trapped inside of her own type of New Jersey suburban housewife mind. And that's the sort of OP power that Adam Eve isn't going to be able to defend against, because Adam Eve can, yes, create stuff and attack pretty well, but if Scarlet Witch can defend against those and then just alter reality and go into her mind control type abilities or any sort of mystical realm that she's known for, then Adam Eve is not going to be able to win.
So I agree that what Wanda did to Agatha was very cruel and terrifying in many ways. However, I think matter manipulation is sort of a cheap way to describe Adam Eve's powers. I think because she's able to control matter at the subatomic level. And if we've seen anything about reality in the MCU, going to subatomic levels allows you to do things like time travel and actually alter reality in ways like that. It allows you to create new dimensions. So I think in a way, Adam Eve also has the ability to control reality. She has telekinesis. She has the ability to get into other people's minds in ways like that. I think her powers are actually very similar to Wanda's, has. She just doesn't always use them the same way. But I think, as I said before, because she's had a mastery of her powers much longer than Wanda has, I still don't think Wanda's even at her full potential. I think Adam Eve is able to win based on her experience, based on the fact that she's fought on these teams and also been on her own for so long, and that she's just used her powers she's used that time to learn how to use her powers better than Wanda has.
Okay, I mean, you say that she has a mastery of her powers, but I think I actually don't see that in terms of Adam Eve, because I think weakness-wise, if we're judging on how they use their powers, I don't think we've ever seen Scarlet Witch get tired from using her powers. She seems to be a limitless supply of energy who can always use her magic spells whenever she wants. Adam Eve, on the other hand, I believe needs to consume like a large amount of like calories in order to keep going, because she's making all this matter. And we've even seen her tired after a long, hard day of rescuing people. Like in the show, she comes home and she's beat and she's exhausted. So I don't think that she has as much mastery of her powers and can keep going as long as you say that she does. And I think this one would be close, but what I also see it like coming down to is who wants it more. I mean, Scarlet Witch, who's driven by this new desire to master her witchcraft powers and become the most powerful sorceress on the planet, compared to Adam Eve, who's going through a phase of, like rebelling against her parents and running away from home. So yeah, I think Scarlet Witch has this one.
I disagree on the energy thing. I think it does cause Scarlet Witch to use energy. We've seen her stop like large things from hitting her, even when she's fighting Thanos and Thanos tries to hit her with his blade and she stops it. You can tell it like takes something out of her. It takes energy out of her. She has to focus a lot. In the Hex in WandaVision, she has to focus to expand it. She has to focus to find vision and do things of that nature. So it definitely takes something out of her. Maybe not on the same level as Adam Eve, so I'll give you that, but I still think Adam Eve has that over her. And we're talking about Wanda. You say Wanda has this new focus to be this witch, this all-powerful sorcerer. The second she heard her kids' voices in that post-credit scene in WandaVision, she immediately went back to, okay, gotta find my kids. She is distracted by other things. Adam Eve is not. So that's how Agatha was able to even get the upper hand on Wanda. She took her kids hostage, and Agatha was beating her. A witch with much more experience in Agatha Harkness was able to beat a stronger witch because she was able to use her kids against her, until Wanda, in my opinion, got lucky.
I mean, you say distracted, I call it driven, but I guess we disagree on that point. We move on to our third and final fight, and it's Robot versus Iron Man, and I'm very interested to see your thoughts on Robot on this one. So how about you start this one off?
So this is interesting. Both of these people are geniuses. Both of these people... That's really sort of where it stops. As they both use mechanics. They're both geniuses, but that's sort of it. Rudolph Connors has this almost unhuman, because he is a human. It has been revealed in the show that he is a human, just sort of controlling all these robots, which can fight powerful enemies like Flax. And so he's able to build machines that are able to withstand like powerful fights. So Iron Man might be able to take on Thanos. I think robots could do the same thing. But Rudolph Connors is this insane genius who's literally had nothing to do the rest of his life but live in a tank and become this hero. And eventually in the comics, he becomes a villain. You start to see shades of that in the show. But Rudolph Connors has a dark side that I don't think Tony Stark has. And in a fight like this, I think that's what's going to give the edge to Robot.
All right, so Iron Man has time and time again proved himself as one of the smartest people in the MCU. I mean, he's a great hero both inside the suit and outside the suit. And I think that's really important for this fight. I mean, like, both Iron Man and Robot are geniuses who can analyze any situation and I think come up with the best solution possible. But the reason why I think Iron Man definitely takes this one is simply because of the tech used. I mean, the Iron Man suits have evolved just immensely to use like all this nanotechnology. I mean, they're equipped with different attacks and different maneuvers that are just basically almost unstoppable. And they've come so far since, his very first suit in the cave. So you say that Robot kind of spent a lot of his life, kind of focused on getting the body and dedicated to, kind of his cause. But I actually think that's like a downside of him because, I mean, he was too busy busting, two criminals out of jail to build him a human body because he couldn't do it himself. He wasn't smart enough to have the technology in order to do that himself. I mean, like, while Robot was preoccupied fixing his, his human situation because, like the air was toxic for him, Iron Man was making suits that are close to indestructible. I mean, Robot is too obsessed with trying to be a human than he is on making a great robot machine, and that's why I think Iron Man's going to win.
I disagree. I think being obsessed with being a human forced him to make the best robot machines because his body, being in that container in the air, yes, was toxic, needed so much protection that he was able to build these machines that could take on that sort of a challenge. Iron Man did not spend all of his time creating tech. Yes, he's very good at it, but Iron Man spent time as a playboy, as a billionaire, as a philanthropist, as a genius, just to throw in the fourth one in that line. But Iron Man is a very distracted person. Sometimes it drives him, sometimes it's to his downfall. You say his suits are better technology. I fully disagree. Robots' suits are able to take on entire alien races that invade the planet without becoming useless. Iron Man fights Thanos, takes a punch, and half of those nanobots are off of his suit, and Thanos is able to stab him. While the technology is cool and very similar to Black Panther, how the suit comes out from the teeth, and how his suit sort of emerges from his arc reactor, I think it's cool, but I think it has weaknesses that could easily be exploited, especially when we realize that Robot in his human form is even stronger because he has a neural link now to all his robots. It's basically like fighting 100 people at once.
See, you say that Tony Stark gets distracted and didn't start until much later, but I actually think that shows the genius level of Tony Stark because he doesn't need to spend his entire life devoted to one cause in order to do that. I mean, just look at it in the Avengers when he said he became an expert in nuclear physics, astro technology, or whatever it was, overnight. Look at how he invented time travel, basically in one night. Tony Stark doesn't need to spend a lot of time devoted to a cause in order to be really good at that cause. And I think that's what's going to give him the edge here. If he devotes his time to defeat Robot, he'll come up with a solution in 3 or 4 hours here, and that's all he's going to need. And you say that Robot has this link to all the other robots in his past. So then it comes down to a fight between Robot's army of robots versus Tony Stark's Iron Legion. I mean, we've seen Tony Stark operate his Iron Man suits without actually being in them. We've seen him control a large army of other Iron Man suits, and I think what makes it the difference is that Robot needs to have this neural link to all his robots at the time. Iron Man and Tony Stark can program his robots to at least operate on their own and be a little bit sentient to do their own type of thing. And I think when you're fighting a large robot v robot army, that's going to be important. So I'm sorry, robots. I mean Tony Stark's going to win.
I disagree. If it's like the Iron Legion, a group of citizens is able to throw and hurt one of the Iron Legion soldiers. There's a big difference between being one mind, similar to Ultron, and just having suits that you program to all be somewhat artificially intelligent. Like they say in Iron Man, you can have a plane, but you'll always need a pilot. And that's what Robot's been able to do. He's been able to be the pilot in all these different suits. And yes, you mentioned earlier how he wasn't able to figure out the gene splicing to clone a new body. But that's okay because that just shows us how much more clever Robot is than Tony Stark. Tony Stark might be, I agree, Tony Stark is probably smarter than Robot on an IQ basis. But I think he's lazy at times, I think he's distracted at times, I think he's busy doing other things, and he's nowhere near as clever as Robot to come up with a plan like releasing the Mauler twins and still being able to have an upper hand when they eventually turn on him, which he knew they would. He planned out every step and still was able to get them to make a new body in the image of Rexplode with a neural uplink to all the rest of his robots. I think that makes him way more clever than Tony Stark, which in a fight is much better than just having a higher IQ.
We've successfully pitted two universes of heroes against each other. I mean, I think this episode was a lot of fun. I think it's interesting to place heroes in unique situations, and having the Avengers fight the Invincible squad offered a different type of matchup than we're usually used to seeing. So what was your favorite matchup? Who do you want to see next? Let us know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching CBR Saga, CBR's one and only podcast. I'd like to thank Nick for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.